Happiest of Sundays to all. Happiest of Sundays to all. It is a USC Sunday. I mean, that's all we can say. We were a little busy yesterday, so there was no instant reaction. We're here today at our normal time at 9 a.m. And I'm going to start with this. Drug addiction is very bad. Just hear me out. Drug addiction is very bad.
We don't even get a hello, welcome.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're straight to sort of, chapter 3 of Alcoholics Anonymous.
I apologize.
We're in the session.
How are you guys doing? I'm so sorry about that. I'm super sorry about that. I have a lot on my mind and a lot to get off. But I'm also happy because, I think I could say in 30 minutes, I made French toast, bacon, and eggs. So, I did all that. I even went to the store within that run. So,
wow.
I'm a champion in my own mind. But how are you guys doing? I totally apologize. That was rude of me. Very disrespectful. And that is not a true Trojan way. That's the Lincoln Riley Trojan way. And I should have never done that to you. Ryan, Jamal, how are you guys doing?
Good. Well, I guess I already had my cigarettes this morning, and we got the chairs pulled up. So let's get it rolling.
Coach, I'll put it this way. You were 2 plays away from making that a successful introduction.
Definitely. So the reason why I was talking about drug addiction, I'll say it like this, because drug addiction, when you meet a person who's really addicted to drugs, they lie, they deceive, they're in a stage of denial of what's going on in life. Lincoln Riley is our drug. He lies, he deceives, and he puts us in a stage of denial. But then once again, that ugly monster rears his ugly head. And this goes back to 3 years ago when they first lost to Utah. And they said, we weren't used to the altitude, and we didn't know the fans were going to be that loud. Later on in that year, they lost the Pac-12 championship. They went to Dallas. They got smoked by Tulane. In the same situation, they blew a lead. Jamal, Ryan, I think the best player that Lincoln Riley has ever brought in and the missing piece is Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison was the reason why SC won 11 games the first year. I'll tell you why. The second year, continuing on, they bring back the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, going for 2 Heisman trophies. Only one person ever done that. Very subpar season. No Jordan Addison. Couldn't stop a nosebleed on defense like the year before, but we was hidden. It was hidden. We were in denial at that time. We were reared by ugly truth. But the defense was very exposed in Tulane. It was very exposed last year. He gets fired. Still blow leads. Caleb Williams no longer has Jordan Addison. It's not the same. We come to this year. We get a new defensive coordinator. We got a shiny new toy. We got young receiving core. We got Miller Moss. We got everything we need to do. Our recruiting's getting a lot better. But then the ugly truth rears its head. We can't stop a nosebleed. We keep blowing leads. Nothing has changed in 3 years of the era of Lincoln Riley. Now, I'm with Jamal now to getting to a point to where I'm still holding out with the Miami hope because Miami was plus 20 and Miami's been down longer than SC. So I'm still saying there's a chance. But is SC really an elite football program still? Is this a Penn State of the West, like I said last year? Let's have some years with 11, and if we go down and win 8 and 7, as long as we make a blowover game at least so often we get 11 wins and we're good. We're good with that. Is that what this has come to? I'll circle around, and I'm gonna get to Lincoln Riley. He's not safe, but this is where we are, guys. Are we? We have to question. Is this an elite football program? That's the question we have to ask. And I'm starting slowly to agree with Jamal. This is an elite football program because we just lost to Maryland. We're going to lose to Rutgers. We're going to get smoked by Washington. We may have an under 500 season this year. There's nothing you could tell me to change my mind about that. That's the direction we're going. That's where we're trending. If you're a stock guy, you'd be like, oh, this stock is definitely headed that way. So that's how we're going. I'll pass to Ryan, and then Jamal, you can pick up from Ryan. What are your thoughts on yesterday? How do you feel? Let it all out. Oh, by the way, Ryan is mad now, you guys. I just want to let you know. We had a very happy text. Ryan is on our side now. So, Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it was inexcusable. Yes, I mean, no disrespect to Mike Locksley, who's a great coach, but he's a defensive guy calling offensive plays, and they had almost 500 yards of offense. I mean, that tells you all you need to know right there when your defensive-minded head coach is able to move the football at will. And this is now all 7 games USC has led in the fourth quarter. 5 of those games, they blew that lead. 1, they were able to come back and win. That's LSU. The other 4, they all lost. And Coach, you know this. Jamal maybe didn't play football, but you know this from playing other sports. Like, it's a mentality to finish games out. Like, sometimes it's Jimmy's and Joe's, but more often than not, it's a mentality. And I've been people can call it defender of Lincoln Riley. I think more I just kind of saw big picture. I think I had seen enough that I was still on board with the direction. I think there was enough change in the offseason. There was enough change in kind of what he's done and adapted to. But one loss like yesterday can kind of unravel that. And I was at the Coliseum when Stanford blew the doors off of USC and Clay Helton was fired the next day. This was an away game, but it feels like that. And, we'll get into it, obviously. And obviously the money is a huge factor here with Lincoln Riley, but it's at the point now where this program doesn't feel like it's trending in the right direction. Just because of that mentality of not being able to close out games. And I think there's adjustments they can still make this year. Obviously the season's pretty much over now. You're playing for like we've said, the equivalent of a Holiday Bowl at this point, but I think there's still changes which we'll talk about, I'm sure, some player changes and personnel changes and stuff, but the mentality of this team isn't at that point yet where they can, I mean, if you can't close out a game against Maryland up 14, that says all you need to say. Go ahead, Jamal.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not. I mean, it's sort of laughter of pain. I mean, to be honest with you here, to sort of start this off, I was, we were joking. We love Ryan so much, and he brings such a balance, to sort of our conversations. But the text last night, we were joking. It was like almost Ted Lasso meets Al Davis. Like, that's the state of the program right now. Look, I'm going to say this in, a couple of thoughts here. This was an absolutely catastrophic loss for this program. I mean, there's really no other way to slice it. This was sort of the stage 4 cancer loss to this program. And really kind of 5 things come to mind for me. The first is SC was lucky to lose that game by 1. Okay. SC was in, and I'll translate this into sort of Lincoln Riley speak. SC was 3 plays away from losing that game by 20. I mean, the toughest team Maryland played on the field yesterday was Maryland. I mean, when you look at that very first drive, that inexcusable illegal substitution, SC was off the field after having missed the field goal. The illegal substitution leads to a touchdown. That's 7 points. I don't know what Maryland was doing at the end of the first half there in terms of, instead of spiking the ball, taking a 3, Billy Edwards Jr. runs down, wants to run another play, and the snap goes above his head. That's 3 points. That was just all they had to do was just line up and kick a field goal. That's 3 points. That's 10 points. And then the 4th and goal from the 3 before the comeback started. What did Billy Edwards do on that throw? I mean, it was almost like an elementary school kid throwing the ball like a pop-up in the air when their best receiver, Ty Felton, was wide open right down the field in the back of the end zone. So first of all, I mean, this was a 20-point loss last night that was sort of masked by Maryland's ineptitude. And the fact that Maryland had enough possessions to still be able to come back and win this game is absolutely staggering. 3 times SC had the opportunity in the fourth quarter to close that game, twice up 6, and then with that final drive, obviously came up empty. So this is not even just like losing to Maryland, which is bad enough. It's not even the way they lost to Maryland, which is bad enough. But the fact is, the reality, if you just look at it play over play, they got blown out last night by Maryland. I mean, that's where we are right now, number 1. Number 2, let's just call this what it is. This is a culture of softness. This team is soft. And Ryan has alluded to it really well in terms of mentality. These guys are just not physically and emotionally strong enough right now to be competing in the Big Ten. And that has nothing to do with the players, because the players are so talented. This is all about Lincoln Riley and the staff that he's put together. I mean, this is unreal to see 4 consecutive losses now with the lead in the fourth quarter, opportunity to close it out, and you wilt the game away because you're just not strong enough. A lot of conversation also about Riley's level of engagement in the huddle last night, 5 yards away from, meaningful conversations and what have you. So 4 consecutive losses when you have the lead, 3 consecutive losses now on the road. They're 0-3 on the road. Every time they've needed to travel, they've come up empty, and 2 consecutive losses with 14-point halftime leads. I mean, this is just a culture of softness that is very apparent all around. And you could see it kind of in the body language last night. I thought what was so telling is I almost thought Maryland scored with too much time with 53 seconds to go. I mean, and Maryland was just sort of so confident that they were able to score and then get that stop. That was so alarming to me. It wasn't even like Minnesota, where there was sort of this respect for this offense where it's, well, we got to wind the clock down. We got to use all the timeouts. We got to really limit the field. Maryland was just like, hey, we're going to score and we'll see what happens. They're probably going to screw it up. And they were absolutely right because of that culture of softness. And we've reached a stage now, I think, that the program is completely stagnated. And Lincoln Riley, everyone's going to point to the 5-9 in the last 14 games. He's 11-11 in his last 22 games. We've talked ad nauseum about where this team is relative to last year. They went from 5th in yards per play gained to now 27th. And from yards per play allowed, they went last year from 93rd to 85th. So there's a significant drop-off in terms of 7.1 yards per play to 6.1 offensively, and a very, very incremental gain from 5.9 yards per play allowed to 5.8. So overall, this team is significantly worse than they were last year. And when you sort of overlay that with this is year 3 and this program has stagnated, we talked again at length about the number of national championship coaches since 2000, the 80% of them winning a national title within 4 years. But just look around the country. Kirk Cignetti is in year 1. He's got Indiana at 7-0. Kalen DeBoer in year 2 took Washington to the national final, the national championship game. Dan Lanning, coach, year 3, he's got Oregon, number 1 team in the country. Sark, year 3, took Texas to the college football playoff. In this day and age, it does not take that long. The transfer portal is actually an accelerant. It's not a detriment in this day and age to be able to turn things around quickly if you know what you're doing. If you can't turn it around by year 4, you are not an elite coach, or you're not an elite program, or both. It's very simple. And here's where it's even more painful. We talk so much about Lincoln Riley kind of blowing the first 2 years of his tenure with Caleb Williams, obviously for significant reasons, given how talented Caleb was. He's absolutely blown this year. Look at the schedule, guys. When we lay out this schedule at the end of the year, this schedule was actually a very easy schedule. There's 9 games on this schedule against unranked team. Did anyone watch Michigan yesterday? They got their doors blown off by Illinois. That's a 6-6 Michigan team. That's a big logo. That's a terrible football team right now. They've only had to play 3 ranked games this year. LSU, Notre Dame, Penn State. We'll see where Notre Dame is after that Navy game next week. 3 ranked games this season, 2 of them at home, 1 on a neutral site. They did not have to play a ranked road game this year. And this is where we are at 3-4. In a year in the Big Ten, they didn't have to play Ohio State. They didn't have to play Oregon. They didn't have to play Indiana. They didn't have a ranked road game this year. All you got to do is beat the mediocrity and go 1-2 in those games, and you're in the playoff. You actually don't even have to be that good to make the playoff with this schedule. And Coach, we're talking about trying to make a bowl game at this point. I mean, this is where we are. And I think that the fourth point I want to make is that's also getting lost is the player development. And let's just kind of stick to the offensive side of the ball. I think Miller Moss, we've talked at length about the gunslinger, how talented he is in terms of being able to read defenses, all true and all remains to be true. But Miller Moss has regressed from the start of the season. When you look at the Miller Moss against LSU, and you look at the Miller Moss last night, those are two different players. Those are players. The Miller Moss against LSU was a much more consistent quarterback. Last night, we saw a Miller Moss that has become less accurate. He's gotten a little bit lazier with his footwork. His mechanics have gotten a little bit softer. I mean, we saw it with that interception, just kind of back leg, just a floater that really kind of changed the complexion of that game. But the fact that Miller Moss is not developing, at least maintaining his skills and not improving it, this is supposed to be the quarterback guru. Where is the quarterback guru? We got a quarterback who is very talented, who's going in the wrong direction. What about the receivers? Where is Zach Branch? We've talked about this at length. He's a wildly talented individual. Zach Branch from last year to Zach Branch to this year. What has happened to Zach Branch? Where is Lincoln Riley in Zach Branch's development? What ownership and responsibility does Lincoln Riley have there? And then when we look at these receivers, Coach, and Rye, I mean, you talk about Jacoby Lane, who I think the absolute world of. What a spectacular catch he made last night. Look at the talent that's in there. And if we go back to kind of the Pete days, by game 4, Mike Will was Mike Will. You know, he had a couple games, you know, his freshman year, he was homesick. He was a little tentative. By game 3, game 4, he was Mike Will. Dwayne Jarrett, by game 4 of his freshman year, was Dwayne Jarrett. Homesick a little bit first few games, and they were there. These guys now are in year 2, middle of year 2, and they have not broken out. Not because they're not talented. They're wildly talented. Look at the catches from last night. Look at Deuce Robinson. You close your eyes, you saw Deuce Robinson last night. That looked like Drake London. Drake London's touchdown against UCLA in the COVID Victory Bell game, and that touchdown last night looked eerily similar to me. You've got wildly talented receivers. They're not breaking through in a way historically. SC guys have been, Amon-Ra broke through by the second half of year 1. These guys aren't breaking through. Where is Lincoln Riley's player development here on the offensive side of the ball? We're just not seeing it. And then finally, when you think about it from a big picture kind of finances and fairness perspective, everyone obviously now referring to the 34 games with Lincoln Riley versus the 34 games with Clay Helton, right? I mean, that graphic is going around. Helton 25-9 with a Rose Bowl and a conference championship. Lincoln Riley 22-12, no big bowl wins, no conference championships. But I'll tell you, the comp to me from a coaching standpoint that's even more relevant than Clay Helton is Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin was 28-15 when he wasn't allowed to have a vehicle get to the airport, when he was abandoned at the tarmac. So think about this. Lincoln Riley's got to go 6-3 in his last 9 games just to get tarmacked. I mean, that's where we are right now. Okay. So, and when you sort of factor in that he's what he said at the start of the season, $10 million a year, the expectations of this program, if this thing doesn't change in these next few games, we are seriously going to be having a conversation that this might have been the worst coaching job in college football of the 21st century, considering what he said, how much he's getting paid, and where he is, and what the overall results are. This might be the worst coaching job in the 21st century in college football. And the problem now, of course, the elephant in the room is he's owed $70 million over the next 7 years, $70+ million. And I don't think any of us know the exact language of that contract, but you have to assume, given that it's so early in the contract, you're looking at 80% buyout at this stage. I mean, so you're talking about a $55-56 million buyout on top of paying another coach. I mean, think about it this way. You can only pay another coach $5 million a year and still have to sort of pay coaches over $10 million a year because you're paying Lincoln Riley $55 million not to coach your team in a world where SC is still trying to catch up in terms of NIL, in terms of money for the revised facilities. Where is this money going to come from, particularly from a booster base that's getting older? And Coach, to your point, that is now going to be next year 17 years removed from an elite season. And what is that willingness to pay? So we're in a very critical period here where we might just be stuck with him at least through 2025, like we talked about, perhaps even 2026, just from a financial standpoint. And that's the most difficult part to be. When you sort of recognize he's not the right guy, but you don't have a choice and you got to keep him, that's almost college football purgatory. So absolutely catastrophic loss last night, and we'll see where we go from here.
So speaking of Miller Moss, on Friday, I was texting with my buddy who's a scout for the NFL. So I asked him, I legit said, is Miller Moss a first round pick? This is legit his answer. If he was to go in the first round, he'll go bottom half between 28 and 30. Miller Moss is a high second round guy. He needs to sit for a year because he doesn't have enough games, but he is very comparable to an outcome like Jordan Love. So there's something that they're seeing in the NFL. But to your point, I'm not disputing that, but I'm just trying to kill the Miller Moss isn't good enough thing.
No,
That's
that's not what
yeah.
I'm saying. I'm saying
Yeah,
he
yeah,
is
yeah,
good
yeah.
enough. I'm just saying he hasn't developed over the course of this season, not because he's not good enough, but where's the coaching coach?
It's the
That's
coaching. Yeah,
that's the thing.
100%. So here's the thing, and my grandpa told me this when I was like 8 years old. And it stuck to me for a very long time because you think your grandparents are the nicest people in the world. He told me legit, I'm always going to tell you the truth. You may not like what I'm going to tell you. You may not agree with what I'm going to tell you. And what I'm going to tell you may hurt you, but I am telling you this for your well-being. I'm telling you this because I care about you and you need to hear this. We've been telling these fans the truth the whole time. None of these fans liked what we had to say when it came to Lincoln Riley, when it came to Miller Moss, when it came to the defense, when it came to Danton Land 2 weeks ago against Minnesota, and we said that this defense hasn't got any better, and it's not any better. We've been telling these people the truth the whole time, and they didn't like what we had to say. Now we're here. The problem is the three of us, all these people in the thing, we're not high enough on the branch to finally to shake a tree. You know what I'm saying? The best thing we could do is not go to games, and that's how it really works. But at the end of the day, I think you have to raise the money. At the end of the day, if I'm Jen Cohen, I have to raise 100 million and I have to make a move. Because now you're talking about us being stuck with this. Now we're stuck with it for another 7 years. Now we're 24 years away from 20. If we do 7, yeah. Now we're 24 years away from being an elite team, and we just wasted so much time. There's so many big names out there. There's Levy. There's Campbell. I'll even take the guy at Kansas who flipped Kansas in a year, and that's legit, and it's at a school who does not care about football and only cares about making the Final Four national championship, and he's putting a good product on the field. There's so many people out there. It's time to raise the money. It's time to make a move on Lincoln Riley. We're at the point to where we're seeing the same thing. Don't sit there and give me a woman in a blue dress, take her in the back, give her the red dress, and tell me it's a different woman. It's the same thing. We've been seeing the same thing for 3 years. He fools us. And that's the thing about it. He fools us, and he's really, really good. He's really, really good in coach talk and media talk. And he gives us this this preseason thing that gets us all hyped up. And then you kind of believe it. But when you really think about it, you get 1 month to prepare for your first game. He had 4 weeks to prepare for LSU. But give him a week. Doesn't look the same. You get what I'm saying? Unless it's against different competition like Utah State. But FBS, like a Power 5 scholarship athlete, you bring any team in there, and we're not good enough. You can't say that it's the talent. You want to know why? Because like you said, Jamal, Deuce Robinson looked like Drake London. Malika Lemon is coming on very, very slowly, right? Jacoby Lane is legit. You know what I mean? There's talents on the defensive side. Nate Clifton is a very, very good athlete. The guy from Wyoming is a very, very good athlete. Those two dudes are legit defensive linemen that should go probably 4th, 5th round just because of the film collection that they have. But if they were here a freshman, they got the right coaching, like, those dudes should be first-round picks. Those dudes are not bad athletes, but it's coaching. You're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. Which one are you doing? And I think it's a lot of coaching. Even if you're allowing it to happen, it's getting really bad. And at some point, and I agree with Ryan with this, and Ryan, I remember when he was like, you said that they were going to go 8-4 or something like that. I'm not, and my rebuttal was, I'm not going to accept you telling me I'm going 8-4. I'm going to go out and prove to you that I'm going to go 12-0 because that's my mind state. Because I'm a winner. I'm a winner. I'm going to show you how good I really am. It's like they accept being average. And you don't go to SC to be average. You go to UCLA to be average. You don't accept being average. Sorry, Jamal. But they accept being average. It's time to raise the money. She needs to raise 120. She needs to get Lincoln Riley out. She has to find a coach that's going to take a smaller deal because nobody's going to approve another 10-year, $100 million contract. Nobody. You're going to have to take a smaller deal. You're going to have to put a guy on a 5-year plan and see if this works. Even Mario Cristobal is in year 3 and he flipped it with the portal. He got the right quarterback. Like Miami is back. Where are we? Where are we? We're not back. We should have been back 3 years ago.
Coach, the challenge, of course, with this contract is, you know, every time there's been a massive contract that sort of outpaced the sport in an uncapped sport, you know, you always sort of live to regret it. And it's so interesting how sports history keeps repeating itself. We've talked a lot about college football. What's the parallel, Coach? We keep saying it's baseball, right? When you look at those, think about the A-Rod, 10-year, 252, A-Rod ended up having to leave the Rangers to the Yankees because the Rangers couldn't afford everything else around him because that contract was so big. Think about the Pujols contract with the Angels. Remember that 10-year, 300. Angels got nothing out of that. That was one of the worst contracts in the history of sports. Think about
Rendon with the Angels now.
Think about Giancarlo Stanton's contract with the Marlins. Think about Juan Soto's contract with the Padres. You never get the return when you put so much in terms of outsized value on one individual. The problem now, of course, is that you can't trade in college football. So now you're in a position here where you're either stuck with a buyout or does lightning sort of strike twice for USC and Lincoln Riley just sort of chooses to take an NFL OC job if something pops up and it feels right to him. That's kind of the one saving grace. But, Coach, I got to be honest, this is a very dangerous predicament that USC is in right now because the financial flexibility here is so limiting. I mean, to have to pay 50, think about this in terms of context. A major athletic department's budget overall for a year is $100 million. We're talking about a $55 million buyout. Even though that's $100 million per year, that covers 23, 24, 25 sports. This is a massive number. And when you sort of overlay that of having to pay a new coach and a new staff, and you have to stay competitive in terms of NIL, we're probably top 12, top 15, but not where we want to be. You still have to fundraise for facilities and complete that capital project. I mean, where is all this money going to come from with a booster base that's getting older and a booster base that has not seen a credible national championship run since 2008. SC has not lost less than 3 games in a full season since 2008. SC has not been anywhere close to a national championship since 2008. That's 17 years. That's 17 years. Every incoming recruit is 17 or 18 years old. They were not born the last time SC was SC. But that also has ramifications on a booster base. Like, guys like us, Coach, when we were in our 20s at the heyday, now we're in our 40s. Think about the guys now that were 40s in their heyday or 50s in their heyday.
My 30s,
that were in their 70s. I mean, Ryan's the baby. He's got that beautiful skin too. He looks like the baby. But think about it. When you're sort of in a position to be a major booster in your 50s and 60s, 17 years ago, now you're in your 70s and your 80s. You might not be around anymore, unfortunately. So that booster base is shrinking. And, the pie needs to grow significantly and the booster base is shrinking. This is a systemic crisis, really, from a financial standpoint for SC. That's why they put all their eggs into the Lincoln Riley basket. And what's also sort of ironic in so many ways is that SC is almost like a Fortune 500 company right now, because think about all the guys that made the decision to have Lincoln Riley here. None of them are here.
Yeah, they're all
Where's Mike Bone? Where's Brandon Sosna? Rick Caruso obviously still holds a ton of power at USC, but he's not in a formal capacity anymore. Everybody who was the brain trust that was involved in bringing Lincoln Riley here is no longer with the university. So there's also no accountability. There's no one inside that organization that's saying, oh man, I was the one that brought Lincoln Riley here. I got to go fix this. You don't have that accountability now built into the athletic department, because everyone can say, well, it wasn't my hire. I just sort of my job inherited this situation. I'm just going to try to make the most of it. So how does that sort of translate in terms of an urgency standpoint to fix things. It's very challenging from an organizational behavior perspective. So lots of existential questions here as we move forward. But again, Coach, I sort of go back to this. I mean, Lane Kiffin had sanctions. Lane Kiffin had scholarship reductions.
15
Lane
scholarships.
Kiffin was at sort of a zombie program, and he went 28-15, and that was deemed not good enough. Lincoln Riley at $10 million a year, declaring this is going to be the mecca of college football, with House of Victory aligning with him, and the nails starting to come together, and all of this has to go 6-3 just to match a guy who was in a zombie era of USC. That is where we are right now in terms of his performance. And oh, by the way, I can list you the 6 plays that could have flipped over the course of these 3 years, and Lincoln Riley would be under 500 as the USC coach.
Have you guys ever heard of a parallel fire? It happens all the time in football. It happened to Chip Kelly. You know what a parallel fire is? And that's kind of how we got Dancing Lynn. So a parallel fire is, and I don't know if Jen Cohen has the connections to do this, but a parallel fire is kind of like, I call Ryan, like, Ryan, Jamal's not working out with us, but he's a damn good coach. Can you guys take him? Yeah, I'll do that. I could do that for you. So then it's an upgrade, right? Or this might be in the NFL. And then you guys, all of a sudden Ryan hires you. I make the replacement. I get the change I need to make. I think we could get out of this contract if we get a parallel fire with Lincoln Riley, because now the next team has to come and buy him out. Now, the only thing is people are going to say, well, he hasn't won or whatever, and he can always fall back on maybe he's just a better offensive coordinator. I didn't see Lincoln Riley being in the NFL, but I now see Lincoln Riley being a quarterback receivers coach with the Washington Commanders. Very quick by the end of this season. That's the parallel fire that we need. And we get that parallel fire, we no longer have to worry about the buyout, and we could go get a coach that is a builder. We're at the point now where we need a builder. We don't need an established name. We actually need a nobody coming from the liberal arts level, which is like D3, D2, those type of guys.
That's fired. Liberal arts colleges everywhere by coach.
No, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying like that's
Right.
They're mostly liberal arts schools on that level. We need those guys who have built programs and came from nothing. And
like Kurt Signetti.
Yeah.
It's like Kalen DeBoer also came from that level. Brian Kelly's come from that level. And when you think about Brian Kelly in the beginning was on the future like, oh, he might be one of the best ones. But I think he's gotten too complacent and too comfortable, and he can't get out of his own way right now. But Brian Kelly coming up, we need one of those guys because we're on a complete rebuild right now.
I mean, you can follow. It's crazy. We talked about this in the summer. Didn't think we'd be talking about this now in October, but I mean, you could follow the Texas A&M model. I mean, Mike Elko has actually done a pretty damn good job in a very short term, because one thing that I know I mentioned is, the one risk, which at this point, you live with that risk, but the one risk of moving on is then you just kind of destroy your next 2 recruiting classes and whatnot. But Mike Elko showed that when he came in, like he was able to actually almost improve some of the recruiting at A&M, and they still have some top flight recruits, and they're, a 1-loss team that's top 15 in the nation right now. So that's kind of the model you almost need. A guy like he was a builder, right? Coming from Duke and the Texas A&M guy. And the problem is with any buy, I was talking to someone last night who's heavily involved with NIL, is all the big mega donors just don't give an F about football anymore. They just don't care. It's been too long that they've been good that the people with money just don't care about football anymore. And
Really?
So you can fundraise all you want, but if no one wants to write a check,
that's the thing. See,
that's
what I've been saying.
That's
what I've been saying. When you
good.
let go of the rope, and coach, you mentioned it, in the off season, we've got 15, Phil Knights, right? I mean, from kind of a billionaire, 15, 20 Phil Knights from a billionaire perspective, but none of them care about football. So in that regard, we have 0 Phil Knights because what you need is the big billionaire who's deeply passionate about sports, understands sports and particularly football and its relevance to what makes kind of a university great and fun and engaging and special. And when you let go for 15, 20 years, I mean, guys, we're at a generation now. Next year is going to be 20 years since Leinart and Bush, right? I mean, 03 to 05. The Trojan War documentary this is 20th anniversary next year. We can't just keep living off of the past. And what's unfortunate is that part of it was also those great icons sort of detached from the university for a variety of reasons. Pete distanced after 2009, given the fire there. I mean, Reggie's still suing the school right now. I mean, you saw what Lendale popped off with Twitter. I mean, he's always sort of had a beef with Pete ever since that happened. So, outside of Leinart, you also didn't have that ambassadorship, over the course of, the late 2000s and into the 2010s. So that's where you're in a very interesting predicament here. Look, short of this thing going 4-8, 5-7, like, he's coming back next year. There's just no way around it. There's no way around it from a financial standpoint. I mean, even if this team goes 7-5, loses the bowl game 7-6, he's coming back next year. Just financially, you just can't get it to close. And then he's going to get that year to see what happens. At what point is the number digestible enough? I've said that from a pure football perspective, he gets until 2025 to prove what he is. I think that's very fair. Having said that, if they go 4-8, 5-7, you can't give him a fourth year given the resources that he has. But if you just look at it purely from a football box, he's got till 2025 to show his legitimacy. But if you look at it from a financial box, what is that year? Because what's a digestible buyout number? I mean, 30 million? Okay, so then 30 million puts you at, depending on the percentage, right? I mean, if it's a 50% buyout number, because usually these buyout numbers get lower and lower the further along you get into a contract. He's only in year 3 of 10. I mean, so that buyout number has to be, if not 100%, close to 100% right now. And what's a digestible buyout number, even for the richest programs? Maybe 40 million? I mean, that's the thing that happened with Calipari in Kentucky in college basketball. They wanted him out sooner because that program had stagnated. His way of the one-and-done philosophy was not getting it done. But the buyout number was so huge because he basically signed a lifetime contract that they had to wait a few years before it could finally happen. I think, football-wise, it's 2025, but what is the financial year? Is it 27? I mean, what's the number? You're probably at 30 or 40 million where it's digestible. That gets you to year 6 of this contract. So short of a Jerry Jones coach coming in and saying, I paid $300 million for Dak Prescott, I'm not getting my results. I'm 82 years old. I want to see a Super Bowl before I pass away, kind of the Oregon version of the NFL. CeeDee Lamb is Lincoln Riley's prized wide receiver at OU. He's the guy that can get me to the Super Bowl if I get Robert Saleh as my defensive coordinator and Lincoln Riley as my offensive coordinator and put this dream team together. Short of a situation like that where you get the golden parachute from the NFL, how do you do this financially? I just don't see a path.
Well, I didn't know that people weren't donating money. I was in denial and thought people still donated money. That's an issue. You know what I mean? The only way we could get him out is a buyout. Not a buyout. If somebody else buys out his contract, that's the only way we could get him out at this point if we're not getting the money. I will say this too.
And he would have to agree to it too.
Well, no, I'm saying him going to another job is
you can't just tell a team hire this guy and they take him. Like, you have to say, okay, I'll take a demotion and go be an OC. That's the other piece of it too.
Yeah, but
obviously
also
you can put enough fire in him that, like, hey, we're just gonna make this miserable. I mean, let's to end this. I mean, let's talk, because what are ways that they can at least turn this positively for the next, let's say, year and a half. Let's say it is through 25. Because I think there's levers that can be pulled. I've seen a lot in the chat talking about Jen Cohen. This wasn't her hire.
Yeah.
Feasibly, she can't really make a fire because of money, but she can force things that take away control from Lincoln, because Lincoln Riley has full control of everything, or that was part of his deal with Mike Bone. And so she can take away control. She can force, a new GM to come in. You can force different coaching aspects, like give more control to other coaches or whatnot. I personally, I love Miller Moss, but I'd make a change. I'd put in Jaden Maeva, just see what he has. I think Miller Moss, is good. Love his story, but his style of play requires perfect play from the pocket. And the way this offensive line is, they don't give him a good enough pocket to play perfectly from. And we've seen the 5 critical interceptions that aren't just interceptions, they're game-changing interceptions, every single one of them. And Maeva may be worse, but at least he has that athleticism that we've seen Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams, that can maybe just change something up. And in reality, his team, as much as I know Miller Moss is a leader, love him, but they just need sometimes a change gives a spark. And so that's a change I would make. Just, give the keys to Maeva, see what you have with them. But I think there's things Jen Cohen can do over the next year and a half to kind of weave out of some of this, because I think a firing is it's just not feasible unless those donors all come together and say, you know what, let's do something. But I just don't see that happening. So there's other things she can do that can maybe help in terms of leadership that still have him on the sideline, but take control away and do stuff like that.
It's crazy. This new facility that everybody's like complaining about how much we spent on it, that was also a part of Lincoln Riley's deal. I think people kind of forgot that, like, the upgrade of the facilities was also part of his deal to make a commitment to upgrade the facilities, and that got left on Jen Cohen too, because Bone was gone. Like, a lot of stuff is getting left on Jen Cohen. Let's not forget that Jen Cohen is kind of responsible for 2 national championship runs at Washington. Like, it's not like you can't say she's not a football person. She understands football. She's in a better place. Like, I haven't given up on her yet, because she was a part of 2 national. She hired Kalen DeBoer. She's the reason why Kalen DeBoer is at Alabama right now. Like, can't deny anything about that. Like, the coach she hired was in the national championship last year. So, I mean, those things matter. We just need to see if what can she do with her fresh slate. But to answer your question, Ryan, I don't know. I don't know what can be spent to make this work, because it's not a player issue. It's a culture. It's a coaching issue. And there's a lot of problems within coaching that he has not fixed. And I think he refuses to fix. Like Matt Liner said, finishing is a mindset. To be up 14 and finish a game, that is all mental. You know what I mean? And if you mentally can't do it, that is on coaching. That is 100% on Lincoln Riley. And
one easy thing
move forward.
I think you could do it would take some pride. Obviously, swallowing some pride is I would give a lot more control to Matt Entz. I mean, guys coach national championship teams. I know he's different level at North Dakota.
Lincoln
Riley's still a head coach, but
yeah. But there's a weird dynamic there too, right? I mean, how does D'Anton Lynn feel about that, right? You're almost skipping levels, right? It's almost like,
not like
back again to it's like making Deshaun Foster head coach, right? From running backs coach. You're now, how does Lynn feel about that, right? Like, it's not just a direct line from Entz to Riley. It's actually Entz to Lynn to Riley. So it's interesting. I mean, it's a great point. I think if the thing to do on the field, I think you want to give respect to your seniors and your upperclassmen, and you want to be able to do this the right way. I would almost think about this as 2 seasons moving forward. You got a short week. You're coming back cross country. You're playing Friday against Rutgers. And then next week, you're back on the road at Washington. Then there's a bye. And then you close out 3 straight games in Los Angeles, right? You're home for Nebraska, at UCLA, home for Notre Dame. I think at the bye is when you make some changes. I think to your point, I am a big fan of Miller Moss's. Not just his story, but his play. I really think he understands defenses in a way that oftentimes doesn't get appreciated. I mean, he was even lost in the interceptions and the overthrows and the bad mechanics from time to time were also some dimes. I mean, that ball to Jay Fair, like in that window right before the Jacoby Lane one-hander was, a stellar throw. I mean, he makes throws in games that are really exceptional. The problem right now is consistency, not necessarily because of him. I just don't think he's getting the right coaching. So I think, as much as I love Miller Moss, to your point, Ryan, I think you can kind of change the energy a little bit of the team. But I would give Miller Moss the start against Rutgers. And unless that thing just sort of crashes and burns, I think I give Miller Moss the start against Washington. And then with that bye, and you got 2 weeks to sort of reshuffle, then I would go to Maeva and just see in a 3-game body of work, what do I have with Maeva going into the quarterback competition for next year? And similarly, on the defensive side of the ball, in the bye, I would sit the Cliftons and the Myers and the Cobbs and the Mascarenas Arnolds, and I would bring in, the Fountains, the Abasaris. Obviously, we're already doing a ton with Tompkins and Stevens, but I would just play a lot of the young guys and see what I have going into next year, and start building that relationship earlier, because that's also the sad part. It's a bit cutthroat, But, these seniors aren't going to help you next year. They're not going to help you get this thing turned around. You want to honor them. You want to put enough on the field. So I think you let the existing roster play the next 2 games, and then you treat the bye as almost like mini camp. And you've got kind of like a 10-day mini camp to then get ready. 3 straight games in Los Angeles. There's no more travel. You don't have to worry about being, soft and wilting on the East Coast. You've got a 3-game body of work to then see momentum going into next year.
Sounds good. Well, here is where we are now. I mean, I don't even know how to get excited for. I was even thinking each week we should say what unknown player is going to have a great game against USC, because that's like the trend. Like yesterday, it was that Caden Panther guy. Never even heard of him. We thought it was going to be the Ty Felts, and Caden Panther, 111 yards, 9 receptions. Like, this is insane. I guess we just got to put our head down and keep moving forward, guys. Like, we got a job to do. We got to bring the fans information, but I'm just disappointed. What's crazy? Kenny was real quick, Ryan, and you can have her. Kenny came over our house yesterday. Well, because I had the party for Goose or whatever. He came over. He's like, "Oh, you guys play Maryland. You should be fine." I said, "We're gonna lose." And then at halftime, I was like, "Oh, look, perfect scenario. We're up 14. We're gonna lose this 14-point lead." He's like, "It's Maryland." I'm like, "Watch." He came up to me. He's like, "How did you know they were gonna lose?" I'm like, "We just don't have it mentally. There's a lot going on." So yeah, that's a good story. And the Oregon talk wasn't even bad this week, believe it or not. He was at my house from like 11 to 9. There was no Oregon talk, so I survived that. Go ahead, Ryan. What were you gonna say? I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
You didn't want to keep hitting you while you're down, I guess.
Oh, I guess so.
Brotherly respect there. No, just the last thing I was gonna say about the quarterback, and again, it's so hard because of our respect and love for Moss, but I think what I've liked about Lincoln Riley to some respect is he's very protective of his players, and obviously these are college kids. I think he's proven that he's very protective of his players with the media, with everything, with the way playing time, wants to showcase them. But in order to, because again, I think he's going to be the guy for at least 2 years, in order to show that you are truly the head coach thinking about the future of the program, you have to be able to make those tough choices, especially at quarterback. And, I'm not saying I agree with it, but we saw last night Sark benches quarterback in the second quarter for Arch Manning and then put him back out there. We've seen it at other programs where that happens. Obviously, Oklahoma's a mess right now as well, but they've gone back and forth on quarterbacks and whatnot. So at some point, you have to say, hey, this is a guy that I think could maybe fit this better. That's why we went out and paid him whatever, $800,000 in the transfer portal after he was the freshman of the year in the Mountain West. We're 3-4. He's more mobile. We have to admit our offensive line isn't very good. We don't have a clean pocket for a pocket passer. Why not go and give the guy that can scramble and shows some Caleb-esque type plays? Now, I agree with you, Jamal. Maybe that happens at the bye, but we'll see. But that's just my last point. Again, it's hard because I love Miller, but at this point, with the season going, why not just throw a change?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Rai. It's totally. You need to change up the dynamic, and it's not a reflection of Miller at all. But you said it best. I'll leave it with this. Look at the state of LA football from a college standpoint this year. We got one team that's paying $10 million a year for a coach. We got another team that's not even sure how serious they want to be about football, and they're both 1-4 in the Big Ten.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Well,
the Dodgers are going to the World Series today, right?
Yeah. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. We did that. We did that on Friday, and they got their rails. They got the cars blown off the rails. Come on, don't do that. The Dodgers played today.
Do that on Friday. What are you talking about?
No, I'm saying all the fans even the people on TV
I said they were going to lose Friday. I said they were going to win Thursday, lose Friday, win in LA to go to the World Series.
Oh, okay, because everybody was like, there's no reason why the Dodgers should lose. Blah blah blah. This and that. And guess what happened? They got the real card blown away. Come on, man. The Dodgers have a chance to go to the World Series today. Let's do it that way.
They got Kirby smarted. Everyone doubted the Mets. Everyone at ESPN doubted them.
Yeah. So definitely.
What if Lincoln Riley goes back to OU? What if OU buys out Lincoln Riley? They could use it.
Hey, yesterday was the first time OU fans were saying that. Yesterday was the first time where OU and SC fans were like consoling each other. Like, we're both just bad. Like, let's stop the hate. Like, I thought all over.
Is
Twitter,
there
everyone's
a
like,
clever financial situation where OU pays half the buyout and SC pays half the buyout to send Lincoln Riley back to OU?
Well, how much of his buyout are we still paying from OU?
It's probably done at this point.
that's done, yeah.
You think it's done? Because I was gonna say, what if we just, I don't know. There's
withhold.
Not withhold, but like, I got to come up with a contract negotiation, and I got to sit down and think about that for everybody to walk away happy. You know what I mean? But in the art of negotiation, you think you're walking away. Everybody walks away happy, but when everybody goes on the other side of the door, they all say, "Ha, we got what we wanted." Those fools. Yeah. So, yeah, man. Madman, we'll be at it tomorrow. I don't know what we're gonna talk about. Bring your best recipe.
You got it. Absolutely.
Ryan, enjoy your day tomorrow.
Wise man, doing more important things for sure.
Yeah, so enjoy your day tomorrow, and we'll get through the season. We got Rutgers on a short week, which is scary.
8 p.m. on a Friday.
Yeah, I mean, a capacity crowd of 11 on hand for that one.
Yeah.
Yep, we're going to look. It's crazy. This is like Poly. I just can't believe every school that I was a part of that had every school that had a championship program is just crashing and dying. Good thing it wasn't right after I left, so it has nothing to do with me. So good deal. Now, I appreciate you guys, man. Fans, I don't know. Let's hang
in there. And we'll leave it with this. It's we're down right now. It's bleak right now, but there's a beautiful poetry to this sport, is that just when you think you know, you don't know. And so what's around the bend, none of us know, collectively, but that's why we're all kind of gluttons for punishment. And that's why we love this sport so much. So let's see where things go from here.
Well, how's that saying go? It's always darkest before the dawn.
It's always darkest before the dawn.
Coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lincoln Riley may very well be Christian Bale. You either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Good deal. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you, fans. Thank you guys for hopping in. It's the Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast. You guys know how it goes. Live free, fight on.